Hi, Robert Chuckrow here. I want to talk about non-action and how it connects with the circular movement of Taiji. First, I'm going to talk about circles, their nature, their advantages. Then I'll talk about non-action, at least my view of it. And then what I'll talk about is, or show you, is how non-action enters into the Taiji movements. Circular movement has a number of aspects that are very valuable. One is it's natural. So when I move my arm this way, my hand goes in a circle. It's a very natural thing to do. It's also very compact. So I can repeat the motion without having to go anywhere. With straight line motion, I have to keep going forward or to the side or back. And eventually I'll run into a wall. So, or something, the equivalent of that. So circular motion is very compact. It also has what's called a centrifugal effect, which means, let's take the move bird's beak and single whip. This move that I do is can be used if somebody is coming in with their left hand to grab my throat, and what my wrist can do is drape over his and circle and bring that out away from me. So as he's reaching, this can bring it out. The circular movement has two aspects. One is it can speed up because the energy can keep being added. So that will make it fly out. And there's also a centrifugal effect, where the person's hand feels as though it's being pulled out away from the center of the circle. Those two aspects are very valuable in self-defense. Another aspect of circular movement is that it's confusing to the opponent. So for example, parting the wild horse's mane, where the hands are doing these double opposite circles. In other words, one hand's going up, the other's going down. One hand's going in, the other's going out. And it's three-dimensional and constantly changing. So it's hard for an opponent to keep up with that and to process what's happening. And that can be very useful. Let's talk about non-action. This is my view. Non-action does not mean not doing anything. That wouldn't make any sense at all. To me, it means doing a task, accomplishing something, using the minimum amount of yourself and the rest coming from nature. So the more you can reduce the amount from yourself and supplant that with what's missing with nature, the more it becomes non-action. And when you go to the country and you sit next to a stream and watch the water flowing and the aquatic life and all the other things around you, you start to get this feeling of elation. It's a wonderful feeling. The question is why? And I've thought about that, and I think the answer might be that the Taoist, it might have to do with the Taoist concept that we're here in these bodies on this planet to be able to experience nature. That's our goal, to experience nature and understand it and then be able to become part of it. So if that is true, that is our destiny, that means that by observing nature, we're getting closer to that. But by actually doing it ourselves, then we're even closer yet. So the circles in Taiji, how you do them, will determine whether or not you can get that benefit. It's a lot easier to do it in the movement that you're doing with your own body, with which you're familiar, and not in the outside world where things constantly are changing. So for example, circular movement has two parts. There's the horizontal part and the vertical part. And the two together make the circular movement. So the horizontal part, I'll just see if I can simulate it by shifting. It can be also turning. Either case, the shoulder is moving. If I turn this way, the shoulder's moving that way. If I shift this way, it is. So that's propelling the arm. But at the same time, I'm relaxing my shoulder and everything else in my body as much as possible, which is called song, and loosening so that that joint has its full mobility with very little force. And I'm also supporting this arm by neutralizing gravity using what's called Taiji, which is, Taiji is, in my view, expansive strength. I'm using an amount which just neutralizes gravity, which in the vertical direction, which allows this movement in the horizontal direction. So in this direction, my arm is totally free to move. And the other thing that I'm doing is when it gets to the middle of the motion, I'm shifting the other way, or turning, could be. See? That's called dòng, dàng. Dòng means move. Dàng means swing. In the vertical plane, it would be swing. So those are the elements. There's one more element, and that is, as I do this, and I turn the other way, that opens the shoulder, stretches the tissues. That creates a force which brings my arm back. So I don't have to do that. I don't have to do a movement this way, that way. I'm not doing this, making that happen. I'm letting it happen. Nature is doing it for the most part. Now I'm doing something. Let's talk about the vertical part. In the vertical part, we have gravity to deal with. So if I lift my arm up, I have to do work to do that. When I do so, it's called potential energy. My arm has potential energy. Why is it called potential? Because if I let my arm go, I get that work back. Now I have movement, and that could do something. So it's potential. The energy is not lost. It's potentially available to retrieve. So when I do this movement with my arm, this combines the horizontal part and the vertical part. Up here it has potential energy, which goes into what's called kinetic energy, which is energy of motion. But that starts to die out. It wanes. How do I keep going? Well, I have to now judiciously insert Taiji, just the right amount, moment by moment, to have my arm continue moving continuously. So that is something I'm providing. But now this other part is really free. And so all I'm doing is shifting or turning. I can do it with turning. And timing it so that when it's at the top of the circle, which is the middle of the horizontal excursion, and the bottom, I'm changing direction relative to the direction that the hand is moving. And I have to change direction at some time, so it's not much more work, as long as you understand how to do it at the right time. So the natural elements in this are gravity, momentum, energy, elasticity of the body, and what I'm putting in is as little as possible. I am using Taiji, I am moving my body. And so when I do this, the feeling of elation is not coming from a vicarious experience of watching something else that's nature. It's experiencing it in myself. And that takes it to another level. And you can have this at any time you want. You don't have to go anywhere for it. You don't need special clothing. You don't need a lot of space. Because it's within you, and you can do it, and there's no disruption. In the outside world, there can be disruption because it's constantly changing. But you have the stability of gravity. The dependability, I should say, of gravity. It's always the same. And the elasticity of your body, and the understanding of dòng, So all those things give you a tremendous feeling of elation, and this is why Taiji is such an amazing, one of the reasons why Taiji is such an amazing exercise, because it's giving you so many elements that otherwise would be very hard to get in other ways. Thank you.